So I'm with Raphael. So go ahead.
Guys.
Hey.
Welcome
He's the
to
driver
Portugal.
of the tuk-tuk.
I'll be the guide of this tour. So we are at the moment in Commercio Square. Commerce. This is where all of the wealth that came from the Portuguese ex-colonies got loaded off and then split it out into the warehouses that you see in central Lisbon. So if you ever wonder why the houses in central Lisbon are so big, it's because up until a century and a half ago, there used to be warehouses where we kept sugar, coffee, gold, silver, fish, whatever. And if you look at the name of the streets, they still pretty much have the same name as they used to have by then. So you've got the road of the codfish, you've got the road of the shoemakers, you've got the road of the gold, the road of the silver, and they all called like that because central Lisbon, or downtown Lisbon, was pure trade and commerce up until a few centuries ago.
Who settled this place? Well, you said when they came.
Portuguese have a very, very ancient culture. So as opposed to most people might think, Portuguese origins are nothing related to the Spanish. Actually, the first king kind of is. But the rest of the Portuguese, most of them are actually related to all of different people that lived up here. Think of Portugal and Spain as the most west part of Europe. So anyone from the ancient world that wanted to explore the new one, being the Atlantic, this was the last chance to stop, get food, get water, fix up the boats, supplies, wherever. And that's one of the reasons why this place is so ancient, because people have been coming and going from this place for at least 4,000 years.
Oh, wow.
And as far as archaeology goes back, we can trace all that back.
Wow.
You've got the Greeks, which one of the very, very first ones that come over here.
Yeah.
And then you've got Phoenicians, people from...
Finland?
Nope. People from roundabout Uruk, which is nowadays called Iraq.
Okay.
You've got Mesopotamia, Middle East, ancient cultures.
Mesopotamia.
Phoenicians were basically the ones that brought over to Europe the alphabet that we all use.
Wow.
Olive oil, wine, 350 native grape varieties. They only exist in Portugal and nowhere else. And plus, the knowledge about navigating, hence the Portuguese being really crafty navigators. Right after the Phoenicians, around about the 1st century after Christ, came the Romans. Romans built a lot of stuff. They actually built a city which is right under our feet.
Oh, wow. They built this city.
They don't build this one, they built one that's down there.
Oh.
Their city serves us as foundations for all of this.
So this city was built on top of an old...
Lisbon is built on top of an old Roman city. After the Romans came people from northern Europe called the barbarians, called Saxons, Visigoths and Celts, the ones that destroyed the Roman Empire. Right after them came the Vikings, and the Vikings were the ones that implemented in our culture, for example, the national Portuguese dish, which is codfish. You can have a different fish every day of the year from the Atlantic Ocean. The only one they cannot have is codfish because we don't have it. We still buy it from Norway. Vikings apparently were the first culture that ever preserved fish in salt. After the Vikings came the Hebrews, Israelis,
Yes.
Jewish people, around about century 6. Century 7 came the Moors, the Arabs from northern Africa. So they ruled the Iberian Peninsula for around about 850 years.
Wow.
Up until 1,000 years ago, more or less, from Barcelona to the south was all ruled by all of these different people. So when Spain starts up as a country, they start up in the north, dividing into 4 little kingdoms: Navarra, Leon, Castilla, and another one that I can't remember now. But there were 4 different kingdoms, and they wanted the whole thing for themselves. So the idea was to conquer the whole thing and make Spain big. It was a French prince called Henry de Borgoña that married Teresa de Leon, the fathers of the first king of Portugal. So when Henry de Borgoña, the French guy, dies, his son goes to his mom and said, "Bugger off Spain, I'm going to be the king of this place now." And there was a problem because his mother wanted to stay as Spanish and she wanted to make this place a Spanish place. The idea was, let's have a battle against each other. 1128, son against mom. Mom loses out the battle, fleds out to Spain. He stays pretty much on his own. But the people that actually helped him out were the English, Crusaders and Knight Templars. Basically, they needed a safe haven where they could be without the ruling of the Roman Catholic Church. So when they got to him, they came back to Lisbon, took the castle of the Arabs and gave him choices. Either go away or accept him as the king. So he actually made alliance with most people that were here because he had no other choice. You know, they had no people to actually populate the country. So the idea was just leave them be as they were up until now and build up a country.
Yeah.
That's how the Portuguese culture starts up. And one of the reasons why it's so difficult to learn Portuguese, because we speak Latin like French, the Italian and the Spanish, is the influence of all of those people in our language. So we basically speak Latin like an Arab, a Jew and a Viking, which is most of the Portuguese to start with. So every word that starts with AL, it's Arabic. Most of the Portuguese, the old Portuguese families' surnames are still Jewish names. Give you an example. Algarve, which is the southern part of the country, starts with O, it's an Arabic number. The mosaics we see on the walls of the buildings, we call them azulejos. And a lot of people kind of misunderstand it as being blue because it's all in Portuguese it's blue, but it's not. In Arabic, it means polished stone.
Okay.
Alfama, the old city, which is where Lisbon was born, but it's been there for thousands of years, is where they found water first. So it means the place of the water, or the water terminals, for example. Alcantara, the place of the bridge, where the margins are the closest to each other. It's
Wow.
loads of stuff that relates to them. And the further south you go, the more you notice the influence of the Arabs, like the name of the villages and the cities, what they eat and stuff like that. So it's a
Awesome.
big influence of all those cultures. As far as the mosaics on the walls of the buildings go, you've got two different types. From Lisbon to Granada, Seville, most of them are geometrical shape designs. Arabs, being Muslims, are not allowed to draw images. It's their culture permanently not white. And you find them mostly from here to there. And from here to Barcelona, you'll find a lot of mosaics on the walls of the buildings with images of saints, boats and sceneries that belong to the Portuguese side. The reason why you see them all over the place is because up until a few centuries ago, they were a symbol of wealth. So anyone that wanted to ostentate wealth has put tiles on the walls of the buildings inside and outside the house. Nowadays, it's just a regular thing in Portugal, and it's part of the culture, so a lot of people still do it. But it's pure embellishment. There's nothing to do with that. Even Lisbon used to be Arab too, as a name. So Lisbon has been a Roman city, it's been a Phoenician city, and for the past 1,000 years it's been a Portuguese city. And the Arabs called Lisbon Lisbona, the Romans called Lisbon Policipo.
How did you learn all this?
A lot of stuff.
Let's go. All right.
So this street that we're going on now, it's called Silva.
Okay.
So if you have a look at a building in central Lisbon that looks like this, they used to be banks. All of the plain duck ones used to be warehouses where we get the sugar, the coffee, and all of those kinds of stuff. So one of the most iconic monuments, landmarks in Lisbon is Lisbon's Cathedral.
Ah.
And the reason for that being is because it was actually built by the first king of Portugal around about 1147. And the craziest thing of them all is that it survived a massive earthquake from the 1700s.
It looks like it's built rock solid.
Oh yes, 1147 is when it built its first too.
How you like living here?
It's not work, but it's fine.
What do you like about it? What don't you like about it?
Food, wine, safety, and the sunshine. But work is hard work. If you have to work for a living, especially when you're actually beginning that your life after uni, it's not the cost of living, it's more what we get paid for.
What is normal pay here?
So minimum wage is around about 850 euros a month.
Okay.
And that goes pretty much all across the board. But then you've got a lot of taxing in like that. And the housing costs twice as that, for example.
Oh.
It's down to the fact that Portuguese government insists in having a lot of high taxes.
Ah.
That's how they earn their money.
Do you study history?
I did for a little bit.
So you rent this
Your
out?
money's worth.
You rent?
No, I work for a company. Sadly, not everyone does exactly the same thing, but I'd say there's a few of us that actually get interested by it and try to do
Well, that's why I picked you. I could tell you knew your stuff.
There's a lot of people that does this as if it was a taxi, and it's totally against it. If you want a taxi, get a taxi. Most people actually claim to be tour guides. If you're a tour guide, you make sure that you do a tour guide's job. Another thing, if you ever come back to Lisbon, one of the coolest museums that you can actually visit, it's this building here. This building, the ground floor and the underground floor, is where one of the old Roman baths used to be, the tub. And last year they transformed the whole thing into a museum. So basically they divided it into little sections accordingly to people.
What's a Roman bath?
It's where they used to go and have saunas and stimulant baths, like a bathhouse. If you ever come back to Lisbon, pay a visit to this place because there's a lot of information about the Portuguese culture up there. So if you do ever come back, pay a visit to that because you've got around about 4,000 or 5,000 years of history inside of that place.
I can tell you this is a place I'll come back already. I saw it when I landed in the airport last night on the drive. I was like, it reminds me of a London a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just the buildings, and this has never been bombed by any world war either. I don't know.
No, because what happened was the dictator, which was a friend of Hitler actually, he decided to become neutral throughout the Second World War, which was actually good because we managed to save a lot of Jews, and this was a safe haven for anyone that wanted to come over. And he's never got bombed.
Yeah.
We live a dictatorship, a very bad one, but 50 years of dictatorship from 1920 to 74. But yeah, the only thing that destroyed really a lot of the city was the earthquake from 1755. Another thing that I like recommending people to do is to pay a visit to the old Roman theatres. If Romans had cities, there's surely a theatre still. So the one in Lisbon, we only discovered it 40 years ago. which is kind of crazy because it's been here for like 2000. From this side, edge of the river, it's already nice to build this embassy into with this. You see there's an elevator up there, it goes on the road, on the church. But the most interesting side, you see, and it's this one here, that we're still excavating. So what they do twice a week, sometimes even 3 times a week, they invite theater companies to come over, play Roman theater, Roman music, sometimes they do wine tastings. It's really cool. The whole activities for July and August are right there. So 5 o'clock to 10, 11, twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, there's always something going on in this place. So Lisbon is like a valley basically, with 7 hills surrounding it though. So downtown Lisbon is the low part of the valley, and then up on the hills you've got where the locals used to live at, like it's called Chiado.
That's where we're staying.
Yeah, Chiado was actually a poet from the 15th century, and most Portuguese that live in central Lisbon still live around about that area because it's actually easy to commute with boat, metro, train down the road and all that. Yep. This is the old side of it. This is where everything started up, but it used to be where Lisbon was a city up until the 13th century. So the name of the old city is called Alfama. So when they got close up to the river and they could not build anything else, the choice was to use the Roman stuff as foundations to build downtown Lisbon.
So you mentioned that the pay is low here. Would you say that how is the skill set of the people who work here? I met yesterday a guy who's the chief technology officer at the airport, and he's like, I haven't even been able to leave on vacation the last 20 years because he's like a slave to his job, he said. Yep. I found that interesting. You said 850 euros per month is the minimum wage, which is crazy because I think US right now we're at like, I mean, it was like $7-8, which is, and then it jumped up to like 15.
It's just down to politics.
It's down to politics.